What's going on, guys? It's your boy Spyder just with the Brutally Delicious Podcast, coming at you tonight with a live concert review. Tonight I attended Nile's Revenge of the Underworld tour, supported by 6 Feet Under, Psycroptic and Embryonic Autopsy at the Orpheum Theater in Tampa, Florida. Now, I'm going to preface this review with a couple things. Firstly, I was a little disappointed with the crowd in Tampa and the turnout. Tampa is considered the capital of death metal, around the world. So I was assuming it was going to be pretty well sold out, or if not sold out altogether. But that wasn't the case. It was maybe like 75% sold out, so it's kind of disappointing in that aspect of it. And the other thing is Psycroptic and Embryonic Autopsy I had never even heard of before coming to this show, so I didn't know what to expect there. And while I've heard of 6 Feet Under and Nile, I've never seen either one of them, and I wouldn't really say I'm an expert on their catalog. I have listened to some of their music before, but I'm not going to say I'm an expert in it at all. That being said, this show kicked ass. If you're a death metal fan, this is a can't miss show, man. This is 4 bands, 4 different subgenres of death metal. You really can't ask for anything better. They were hot all night long. It was just a great show. Getting into it, Embryonic Autopsy opened. They're a band out of Chicago, a relatively new band to the scene, having formed in 2022. And yes, I did look that up after the show. These guys are the 80s and 90s throwback, brutal death metal sound. A lot of distortion, fast drums, really cool riffs throughout the songs. Just a good throwback sound to that era. It did take the crowd a few songs to kind of warm up to them. I guess, obviously with them being newer, I'm going to guess a lot of people didn't know their stuff or wasn't familiar with it. But the crowd finally did get into it. Mosh pits broke out, and it didn't really stop from there. The band had some pretty good crowd work. The one thing that really kind of intrigued me about the band was their bass player reminded me a lot of Alice Lane from Infected Rain, which is one of my favorite bands, just in her mannerisms and playing style on stage. That was kind of cool. Again, really good set from these guys, relatively short being the opener, but a really good set. Next was Psycroptic. And these guys I freaking loved. They have blew my mind this tonight. They're a band out of Australia, very technical death metal meets thrash. Counter to most death metal vocalists, this singer didn't have that deep, low growl as a vocal. Instead, it was more of that throaty, harsh kind of scream. But it fit the band, and it fit the sound that these guys were working with. Now, these guys worked the crowd really well. The singer did a lot of talking with the crowd in between songs, did some explaining the songs, just made light and made jokes about Tampa. The music itself was just phenomenal. I dug this all night long. And the singer himself was hysterical. Like I said, he was joking about Tampa and calling people out in the mosh pit and everything. Just a lot of really good crowd interaction. So these guys would definitely be on my list to see again at a later time. And it's a reminder for me to kind of go back and look at some of the bands out of Australia and New Zealand that are coming out. There's been a lot of really good bands that I've seen and heard lately out of that part of the world, so I need to kind of go back and look and see what else is coming out there. Third on the bill was the Hometown Boys, 6 Feet Under, formed out of Cannibal Corpse and Obituary members originally. These guys have been around since the 90s. They've really made their own sound, as they call it, death and roll. It's kind of that death metal meets groovy rock and roll music. Excellent freaking music. Really dug it. I had a lot of fun listening to these guys. The crowd took a second or two to kind of get used to them again. They did say it's been a while since they've played in Tampa, but once the crowd got going on it, they got going, and this didn't stop the rest of the show for them. There was a point where I heard a few people in the crowd, and myself included, kind of making comments about the singer, Chris Barnes, would make this random, really high-pitched sound, and I don't know if he does that just on the albums, if he does it all the time, or what. It was slightly confusing, kind of ear-piercing at certain points. And a good part of the crowd kind of felt the same about it. But overall, still an awesome performance from these guys. They were definitely who the majority of the crowd showed up to see. And that kind of makes me feel bad for Nile as they finished the show because, yeah, a lot of people wanted to see 6 Feet Under and then didn't really stick around for Nile. So that kind of made me sad about it. One thing I did notice with Nile, too, is, and something I didn't know about them, is all 3 of their singers, or guitar players, also sing, and they sing interchangeably. It's not like a couple of, two of them are backup guys and one main guy. They all three kind of interchangeably sing in between and outside of new songs. Now, Nile was supposed to have played 70K last year, and they had to back out because of COVID-19 issues. So I am glad I got the chance to see them here again. Kind of disappointed with the Tampa crowd as they kind of started bailing about midway through their set. But they still put on a great show. They worked the crowd as best they could. They did a lot of back and forth with the crowd between songs. Still a really great set. Spaced out among all of their albums. There's nothing that really dominated, and yes, I looked that up too. Overall, a really awesome show. If you're a death metal fan, this is a must-see show. 4 different styles of death metal, in brutal death, the thrash and death, the death and roll, and technical death, all in one package. You can't really miss this show if you're a death metal fan. There's still plenty of dates left. This is one of the earlier shows on the tour. It runs through the end of February, all across the nation. Definitely take a look at it. If you're nearby, you're a death metal fan, get a ticket and go. And as always, this has been Spyder with the Brutally Delicious Podcast. If you like what you heard, give the Brutally Delicious Podcast a follow on social media at Brutally Delicious on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and myself at Sgracious on Facebook, and Spyder G, that's Spyder with a Y 300 on Instagram, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks.
This is the story of Whitney Houston.
This is the story of Kurt Cobain.
Of George Michael, of Otis Redding, of Amy Winehouse, of Michael Hutchence, Bob Marley. This is the story of Prince.
It's a new podcast series
about how they died, why they died, and why we're still talking about them so long after.
It's like nothing you've ever heard before.
It's storytelling.
But it's more than that, because rock stars,
they tell us how we feel. They change our mood.
They change the clothes we wear, the people we hang out with,
the way we remember things.
It's them who give us those ludicrous moments, the ones where you're
jumping around, singing your heart out, feeling understood.
And it's those moments we'll help you remember, the ones you're thinking about right now.
That feeling.
That feeling.
It's coming soon from Crowd Network.
Just search for Death of a Rock Star on your podcast app.
And subscribe now.